Hi there, and welcome to Our Weekly Craft, a source for ideas, inspiration, and fun for crafters. I'm Sarah White, Chief Maker at OurDailyCraft.com, and I've got what I think is going to be a quick one for you this week because I'm like super frazzled. There's so much going on, and I'm like about everything. And so I'm like not prepared at all, which is not that much different from normal, but I think it's going to be a quick one today. I want to talk about the labels that we use for things, for our craft, our work, everything that we do in our lives. I've talked about this a little bit before because I talked about like calling it art and what does it mean if you call the things you make art instead of craft or instead of a hobby or whatever. But this is a little different because it's not so much, for me anyway, this right now, it's not so much about the stuff as it is the space. So I have this room that you have seen this corner of in pretty much all of these vlogs. I think I did the first one actually at my desk, so you saw like the curtain of the window that I'm facing as I do this. And my computers are in here. I have a work computer for one job and a computer that I do everything else on. So computers are in here. My sewing machine's in here. My yarn is in here. I have this scary, scary craft closet in here because I used to have a different room that's now my daughter's bedroom, and it had a much better closet, and I have been in this room for like 3 years and I still haven't figured out the storage, but I'm working on it, and that's part of the thing is that I've been cleaning in here. I'm going to take you on a tour, but it's not quite ready for that yet. I'd like to have the scary craft closet cleaned out before I show you everything, but it's been on my mind of like, what do I call this space? So it's always been my office because I do my work for money in here, but it's also a craft room, right? Because I have yarn. I mean, like I store yarn here. All my sewing is done in here because it's where my machines are. I don't do a lot of knitting or crochet in here or other crafts really, just because the only chairs are my office, my like desk chair, and this, which is my sewing machine chair. So there's not like a really comfy space for just sitting and reading or crafting or whatever. If I'm not using the machines, but I feel like, again, like with calling it art or calling yourself an artist, I wonder if I approach the work I do in here and in general differently if I call it my studio instead of my office, or even if I call it my craft room / office, or my sewing room / office, or I've been working on, I mean, it's like backburnered a lot, but my whimsy book idea, what if I call it my whimsy workshop? That's a little silly, but the point is kind of like bringing that fun, creative, whimsical aspect to not just to the creative work. I mean, in the work that I do is creative, like it's words, it's writing and editing and project management, and I write about crafts and I write about other things, parenting and whatever people will pay me to do, but all of it's creative, right? So why do I need to call it an office? Like, that's lame. Like, oh, I'm going to my office to do my work. That doesn't sound very inspiring or fun, right? And I know it's not fun all the time. Like, definitely, that's part of my frazzledness right now is like, it's not all fun. And there's a few not fun things that have coalesced in this week that I thought was going to be okay, and it's been really not okay. But, how does that feel? I'm going to my office to do some work versus I'm going to my studio to do some work, or, I'm going to be in my craft space doing some work. Even if it's the same work, somehow that feels a little different to be like, I'm going to my studio versus I'm going to my office, right? So that's the thing that I'm kind of playing with in my mind, if not so much out loud. Thinking about it as going to my studio to work, going to my craft space to work, rather than going to my office, and just seeing how that sits with me and how it feels. And like, also, what do I want this space to look like and feel like if I want, and this goes back to the decluttering stuff we were talking about last week too, but if I want this to be a studio and not an office, how does that change the way it's laid out? Which I don't think I'm going to move anything because like the wiring is over there, so that's where the computer needs to be. This thing is heavy. Like, it was in this room before it was my office, when this was a guest room, and it stayed in the exact same place because it's antique, it's heavy. I'm kind of afraid to move it. Like, this part is separate from this part, so you kind of have to take it apart to move it, and it's a whole thing. So this bookshelf is really heavy. I moved it down the hall myself when I changed offices, but I don't necessarily want to move it again. There's lots of big, like, the walls are completely covered with furniture in this room. It is tight. So I don't really want to like rearrange the furniture, but what else can I do, like in terms of storage? What goes where? You know, what's on my desk all the time? The closet, you know, all of that comes into how do I want it to feel like if this is a studio and not an office? How does that change what it looks like, what it feels like, what's on the walls? You know, I have a cedar chest that was a wedding present that is my fabric storage. And I have this foam piece that's been sitting. Well, the idea was because I wanted to make it like a bench. So then I would have a place if I wanted to sit and read or knit or whatever, or my daughter wanted to come in and hang out, that she could sit somewhere that wasn't the floor. The floor is fine when it's vacuumed. The floor is often, you know, covered with random little bits of thread and fabric and yarn and detritus of everything that happens in here. I vacuumed last week and it's so great. Like, I want to lay on the floor in here. It's so nice. So hopefully I'll keep that up too as I'm working on the cleaning of the space. But it's just been sitting there with the foam on it and no cover. So like, what does that look like if, you know, this is a creative space? What do I want the cover to look like? What art is on the walls? You know, I used to have a painting my daughter did when she was like 2 that hung above my sewing machine, and she took the frame for a poster. It was in like a poster frame. She took the frame for a poster of her own, and I haven't replaced it. So I have this print that I had in my old office that I don't really like. I mean, I've had it for years and years, and I don't love it. And I'm like, why is there not my art or her art or something colorful and pretty and inspiring and fun on the walls? So that's a big thing that I need to work on. When it's been just an office, it's like, it's fine that the walls are beige and there's not really anything going on up there. But if it's a studio, it needs to be beautiful and inspiring and colorful and all that stuff. And so that's part of my thinking too, is like, you know, and I think I mentioned last week, I need a new rug for the floor under my computer. So what does that look like? You know, obviously I need to make something and not just buy something, right? And so how does that work in the context of it being a studio and not an office? I'm laughing because the camera just wobbled a little bit. My cat is sitting on there's going to go again because she just jumped down, but there's a cat in the studio today. So yeah, so I don't know where you craft. I don't know where you work, if you work from home at a job or doing crafts as a separate thing from your work life, if your space is a chair or a room. But I do wonder, like, what you call it, what it looks like, what it feels like. And if you can give it a fun name, even if it is just your recliner that you sit in all the time. Is it your crochet corner? Is it your cross stitch castle, you know, whatever, you know, your craft hut, your crafty closet, whatever. your whimsy workshop, your creative cave. I don't know. I don't have any off the top of my head. You know, and it doesn't have to be a room. Like, obviously, mine is a room because I'm super lucky that because I work from home, I have a whole room. And I know not everyone has that. Um, but if there's a space, even if it's just like the shelf that you keep your supplies on, do you have a name for it? You know, can you make a little sign that says crafty castle or whatever you want to call it? And does that change how you feel about it? If it has a name, if it's a special marked off place that this is what this is for. You know, and maybe it's just because I'm a word person and I put a lot of stock in like what things are called. And maybe to the average person that doesn't matter, but I've been thinking about that and like, what do you call it? And it does a little bit go back to that art, craft, hobby thing. Does it feel like it has more value if it has a name? If you call it a studio or a craft space or a maker space instead of an office? Does that feel different? Does it give you a different approach to entering it, to doing your work there, to how you feel about the work that you do there? And I haven't quite gotten to that yet because I'm not like all the time calling it a studio in my head, but I wonder if I walk up in the morning and I'm like, I'm going to my studio and I'm going to do my work. Even when it's my regular work, that's not always fun and not craft related. Does that feel different than, oh, I'm going upstairs to do my work in my office? So I'm going to play with that in the next week and see, and maybe I'll report back if it's any revelations. But I would love to know if you have a crafty space or an office where you also have crafty stuff or whatever, your corner of your household where you do crafty stuff. Does it have a name? Have I inspired you to give it a name? I would love to hear what you call it. And anything else related to that, what you're working on in your creative space. My other problem is I haven't been doing a lot of crafting this week. I think I did a couple rows of my crochet blanket. I've done no knitting. I knit a swatch for the next sweater I want to knit like on Saturday, and it's Thursday now and I haven't touched a needle since. And I don't know, it's just been a crazy week. I don't have a book to share. I just finished, and I know I was going to start talking about craft books in this little segment, but I just finished reading The Alchemist, which I did not know anything about. I had a friend who years ago said it was her favorite book. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I could read that because I just had a gap between books and Libby. And so I was like, sure, I'll read that, whatever. Not really knowing what it was about, but if it's somebody's favorite book, somebody who I like, right, that's probably a decent read, right? Now, did not enjoy. It reminded me of a time, and which I think was in high school, that I had, which I should have known better at that time, but I had a friend who said that reading the Celestine Prophecy changed his life, and I feel like this is that again. No, it's because I read that, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Maybe I'm just not into law of attraction. I'm not into God. I'm not into like omens and all that stuff. And so the entire book, I mean, kind of both of those books, it's about opening up to the universe and that the universe will provide. If you are on the right path and you really want something, that the universe will open up to you and you can connect with the universal spirit and it will guide your path and you will get what you want. Which I don't know. Maybe I've just never wanted anything enough for that to work for me. But I don't feel like the law of attraction is a thing in my life. I have to work really hard. You know, like hard work, I guess, is attracting things. But, you know, I have dreams and I have ambitions that have not happened. And I don't think it's from lack of good vibes, right? Or really wanting it, or, you know, being open to the universe giving that to me or whatever. But maybe my sarcasm related to that concept is proof that I don't want it enough in that way of opening up to the universe providing things for me. But anyway, So yeah, I think that's it. It is a little short this week. I would love to hear again what you're working on, what you're reading, watching, um, what you're doing in your crafty space, and what you're calling your crafty space. And I hope that you have a great crafty week, and I will see you again soon.